What's up, dudes? Max here, back with some impressions of a game that I had very much been looking forward to, especially since its official announcement at E3 this year, which is Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Now, this game was a big shock to all of us, as Activision was the one that was publishing it, but it is a proper FromSoft game, and it is being directed by Miyazaki himself, so this is his next big game title. Now, today's cool because I get to actually tell you that I got to play Sekiro quite a bit, thanks to the guys at Activision. I went down to their offices and played a solid 30 minutes of the game and got some footage to show you all as well. So, let's talk about it. First and foremost, I think the biggest question many people are going to have is, how Souls-like is this game going to be? How much like Tenchu is it? Because I know a lot of people were thinking this was going to be a spiritual successor to Tenchu, and to be honest, it kind of feels that way. In many ways, this game is about a ninja character. You're not specifically a samurai by any means, you are a shinobi. So the things that you do in the game do have an element of stealth, but there is a direct focus on sword-based combat, and that takes heavy precedence in a lot of your combat abilities, much less your situations where you actually engage with enemies. But you do get some pretty cool stealth kills in this game, and it does remind me a lot of Tenchu like back in the day, just a lot more refined and a lot more fun, because one of the biggest things you're going to take away when you eventually get to play Sekiro is the fact that you get a ridiculous amount of mobility between dashing, between running, between jumping, between using your grappling hook, which is mapped to one button, and you're able to grapple certain parts of the screen. Your character can move around a lot, and it is very refreshing in comparison to other Souls titles where your jumping abilities, much less your maneuverability, is kind of limited and stifled by a stamina bar. There is no stamina bar in Sekiro at all, and everything your character can do is pretty much up to you as the player to sort of figure out and solve the combat puzzles. But what's interesting is that we now get a Souls-style game that doesn't really rely on the level-up mechanics, much less the stamina bar of previous games, and it feels like the game is much more, I wouldn't say difficult or challenging, it just is presenting its enemies to you in a different way because those things aren't there anymore. You're not in a situation where you can level up your character just to get a bunch more health and have that kind of ride you out. You're not in a situation where the game's going to be balanced around the fact that you're only going to get so many rolls or dodges or attacks or whatnot, because the stamina bar is gone now. And that makes the engagements kind of crazy. It makes them sort of seem impossibly hard when you first get into it, but much like the Souls game fashion and Miyazaki and a lot of his game design mechanics, you get into it, you start learning, and you start getting a lot better, and it becomes much more satisfying when you do get the kills, and then you move forward and apply those same strategies to other enemies, and then just keep moving forward and forward. And that entire gameplay loop is very satisfying, to say the least. The combat in Sekiro is completely managed by something called posture, which is a bar that's at the top of the screen and one on the bottom of the screen, which represents your character. And managing the posture of your enemy and yourself and the delicate balance between the two. Once the posture is whittled down, you're given access to a critical strike that removes a big portion of your enemy's health, and some enemies will take multiple critical strikes to take down, including bosses and bigger mid-level enemies and stuff like that. And whittling down the posture pretty much comes down to blocking attacks, much less parrying attacks by pressing the block button right as you are attacked. That seems to take posture away or fill up their posture gauge even further on your opponent's side, and you sort of want to max it out to sort of like stagger them and then go in for the critical strike. But the same thing can happen to your character too. If you just simply block too many attacks, you're going to get opened up eventually because you need to start parrying those attacks, and some things are heavier. And there's also some attacks that are just unblockable, which are represented by the Japanese red kanji symbol that is above your character's head every once in a while. That is a warning that the next attack you have to avoid and you shouldn't specifically block, from what I remember. And you get some pretty interesting engagements as a result of that, and you have to kind of really understand where these enemies are coming from, because sometimes you don't know if this is a high attack. Can you jump it? Can you dodge it? Is it going to track you? You kind of have to learn on the fly and figure out things as you go. But the other big mechanic of the game is also tied to the trick arm, and in the arm we had in the demo, you get different types of kunais, you get a fire sort of buff that you can apply to your weapon for a little bit, and you get some other specific weapons they were talking about but weren't available in the demo. The funny thing about Sekiro is that you're not going to get different main weapons in this game. It all revolves around the same base weapon you have, which is the sword, according to the developers. The thing that's going to change is the trick weapons on your arms. So you get an axe that sort of like clashes down and breaks the guard of your opponents or crushes their shields. And you get really cool hidden things, like if you throw kunais and you press the attack button right after, you follow up with an immediate attack or like a rushing strike, and all these little things that are very cool. And the best part is that when you eventually get the kills on the opponents through the critical strikes, depending on how you engage them and the way you sort of whittled them down, you get different animations. So I saw the same enemies sort of killed in many different ways, which I loved. I like different KO animations and different ways for you to kill the hell out of everybody. So I very much appreciate that variety. Now, the name of the game with Shadows Die Twice is the surname is directly related to a gameplay mechanic, which is the resurrection mechanic. When your character loses all their health, they will fall to the ground and you choose to resurrect or respawn at a checkpoint, which is very similar to bonfires in other Souls games. The mechanics of the bonfires didn't really seem specific in the demo. I even rested at a shrine and then went back and looked to the area that I just cleared out. And after resting at the shrine, I did notice that the enemies were still gone, so that whole element of Souls games where, you know, you kill the enemies and then if you rest or return, they are all returned as well, or you die and they return. That didn't seem to be present in this version of the game, so who knows if that's going to change. It was just an interesting altercation to the Souls formula. But you either go back to the checkpoint of the shrine, or you can resurrect. I think it was 2 times for Shadows Die Twice, and you can use that opportunity to sneak up on your opponent, or sort of engage them once again, so you get a couple of extra retries. There is also healing items, which are very much like Estus. He even drinks it kind of like an Estus drink, and many of the UI and elements of the game are just almost identical to something like Dark Souls 3, so if your worry is that this game is too different from a Souls game, it kind of is just literally, in my opinion, Tenchu and Dark Souls sort of mixed together, but much more focused on the action aspect. This is a character action game, as I don't believe there's going to be character customization. They haven't mentioned anything about it, and there is probably not going to be any stat management, as that's another thing they said was not going to be in the game. More focusing on Miyazaki's specifically designed difficulty. You're not going to have those RPG elements from the previous games to pad things out. The game is going to be designed around how difficult he wants the game to be, and you're going to get some weapons at your availability or trick weapons, but that's about it. So this game very much feels like it's going to be the epitome of just learn the enemy's attack patterns and learn to counterattack at the perfect moment. The only other thing I'd mention story-wise is that there were even some elements in the demo that I can't even talk about that we couldn't record. Moments with like a boss fight that were very fun and very cool, and I wish I could show you, but I can't even show it. But I will say that the story aspects of this game seem to be very, very, very much kept a secret. There is some stuff they're revealing in the trailers, there's some stuff they've kind of talked about in the previous interviews, but anything that I was trying to get story-wise about where the game is going, much less what the overall story is sort of going to be about, they didn't want to talk about, so I'm just hoping Miyazaki has something crazy up his sleeve. I don't expect him to Bloodborne us all over again, but of course I am very much looking forward to his unique brand of storytelling that he has within his games, especially in this environment with these characters, because it is pretty cool. And a lot of the stuff we see in the game is mostly human characters. I don't think I ran into anything that wasn't specifically like a human character or a weird ogre creature that was still kind of a larger human character. So the variety later in the game might be crazy different, and I would love to see what the hell that could be. Visually and graphics, we were playing on the PC version of the game, so it was running at a 60 frames per second. I'm also rendering this out at the highest resolution possible in 4K. I don't believe it was running on 4K on the PC version. I couldn't get any specifics about the console version, whether or not it would run 30, whether or not it would run 60, but I can say it's a good-looking game. Just about as good-looking, if not a little bit better than the Dark Souls 3 engine, which it very much appears to be running off the same thing. I will say the sound design in the game is absolutely amazing. It carries over the incredible sound design that games like Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3 have carried over straight into Sekiro, and it sounds great, dude. So overall, my final impressions, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice very much feels like a smaller combination of Tenchu and the Dark Souls series, but more focused around an action game or main character protagonist action game elements. So you're going to get Much snappier controls, a lot more movement. The game feels a lot faster than almost anything, even including Bloodborne in many situations, because you do not have to worry about stamina. And it seems like this is either going to go very much in the favor of this game and what Miyazaki's vision is to sort of take away the RPG elements and make it more of an action game, or it's going to be sort of polarizing where it's too different from the Souls method and people like the RPG elements and stuff like that. Either way, I think it gives the opportunity for this game to be a bit more focused, to specifically have things be the way they want them to be, instead of having your character having 90 different pathways they can take in terms of their character build. They sort of get to make the one character and all of his unique trick weapons be as cool as they possibly can be. And I did get that feeling, at least in this very early demo, and I was impressed. A lot of the combat engagements were extremely fun, very satisfying to win, very satisfying to continue forward, and I just can't wait to see the secrets this game has piled up, and the crazy assortment of enemies and bosses that we're going to see all the way through it. I hope there's some really, really, really damn cool stuff that Miyazaki's cooking up in the kitchen, and I can't wait because I love me some character action games, and Sekiro is definitely satisfying that itch. Let's just hope this doesn't drop right around the same time Devil May Cry does, because I'm fairly sure the release date might be something similar next year. And I'm looking forward to it even more than before, so expect streams and expect compilation videos in the future. As always, guys, thank you a ton for watching. My name is Max, and I'll see you next time.